The mansion was heavy with silence, its grand walls a constant reminder of the wealth and power that had once filled its halls. Now, as the night stretched on, only the soft shuffle of Soren and Aric's footsteps broke the stillness. They had been searching for hours, combing through each room in Lord Brenner's estate, but so far, nothing had given them the answers they desperately sought. Soren's mind raced. The body of Lord Brenner, found in his chambers, had seemed like an isolated incident at first. But the clues, small and seemingly insignificant, were adding up to something much larger than a simple murder. Poison had been the obvious cause of death, but who had targeted him? And why? Aric, ever the eager apprentice, moved from shelf to shelf in the study, eyes scanning the old books and scrolls. His hands brushed against the spines of the texts, each one a forgotten relic of a time long past. He paused for a moment, turning to look at Soren. "We've checked everything, haven't we? I mean, how many more hidden compartments can there possibly be in this place?" Soren didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on an intricately carved wooden bookshelf at the far side of the room, its dark oak surface polished and almost untouched by time. The mansion was filled with treasures and secrets, but something about this shelf caught Soren's eye. The atmosphere around it felt different, charged with an unfamiliar weight. He moved toward it slowly, his fingers brushing lightly over the smooth wood. He paused at one particular section where the wood seemed to shift, almost imperceptibly, beneath his touch. There, hidden among the ornate carvings, was a small, intricate symbol, one that, at first glance, seemed like just another decoration. But to Soren, it was a mark he recognized all too well. His heart skipped a beat. It was the Iron Wind Order symbol, a mark of power and authority that had once been engraved in the core of Soren's life, the seal of the martial faction he had helped build and later abandoned. A faction that had betrayed him, forcing him into exile, away from the very life he had once ruled. He stepped closer, his fingers tracing the symbol's edges, a chill running through him. "Aric," he said quietly, his voice hoarse. "This symbol, it's tied to my past." Aric, who had been examining the room, turned sharply at the sound of Soren's voice. "What do you mean?" he asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "This symbol," Soren continued, his voice low, "is the mark of the Iron Wind Order, the sect I once led." His tone was a mixture of bitterness and weariness. The memories it evoked were ones Soren had tried so hard to bury. The betrayal. The loss. The enemies he had made in his time leading the Iron Wind Order. Aric took a step forward, intrigued. The Iron Wind Order? But why would it be here? In a place like this? Soren didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of what this could mean. There was no reason for a symbol of the Iron Wind Order to be here, not unless someone with ties to his past was involved in Lord Brenner's death. The implications were impossible to ignore. He crouched down, carefully running his fingers along the hidden section of the bookshelf. With a soft click, a small compartment sprang open, revealing an old, weathered scroll, its edges yellowed with age. The parchment was heavy and thick, the ink faded but still legible. Soren took the scroll into his hands, his eyes scanning the delicate characters written across it. The words spoke of secret alliances and power struggles, hinting at a larger conspiracy hidden within the martial world. As Soren read, his face darkened. The scroll was a record of debts, debt that had been owed, but never paid. Lord Brenner was mentioned in the text, and the way the document spoke of him made Soren's stomach tighten. This wasn't just a random death. This was part of something much larger. A conspiracy was in motion, one that linked the noble world with the darker corners of the martial sections. Aric leaned over Soren's shoulder, reading the scroll with growing unease. "So, this is why Brenner was killed? Because of something from your past?" he asked, his voice filled with a mix of awe and concern. Soren nodded slowly. "It's more than that. This death isn't just about Brenner. It's about the power he had, the alliances he made. And now, those alliances are coming for me." The weight of the discovery pressed heavily on Soren's chest. He closed the scroll, his hands trembling ever so slightly. This was the moment he had feared, his past was no longer a shadow. It was coming for him. Aric looked at him, a determined glint in his eyes. So, what now? Soren exhaled sharply, his mind already turning. Now, we find out who's behind this. And we get ready to face them. The camera should linger on Soren's face, his expression a mix of resolve and regret, before cutting to a wider shot of the room. The symbol of the Iron Wind Order now a glaring reminder of the danger that had always followed Soren, no matter how far he tried to run. The mansion was still, the air thick with the weight of the investigation. Soren and Aric had spent hours going over the evidence, carefully inspecting every corner of Lord Brenner's estate, but there was little to show for their efforts. The deeper they dug, the more tangled the mystery became. Soren knew it wasn't just about the death of one nobleman. No, this was part of something much darker, something from his past that he couldn't escape. As Soren walked the hallway, his mind heavy with the knowledge of the Iron Wind Order's involvement, a door creaked open behind him. He didn't turn around immediately. He'd learned to trust his instincts, and those instincts told him someone was approaching, not just anyone, but someone he hadn't expected to see again. The soft shuffle of boots on the stone floor broke the silence, and then, a voice, a familiar voice, cut through the air. "I didn't think I'd find you here, Soren." Soren's heart skipped a beat, though his face remained impassive. He didn't need to turn to know who it was. Lena Morrow, an old ally from the Iron Wind Order, had stepped back into his life, whether he wanted her there or not. Her figure was outlined by the faint light spilling in from the hallway, her dark cloak flowing behind her as she stepped into the room. Despite the years that had passed since they last crossed paths, Lena's presence still held the same weight, a powerful, calculating force. Her dark eyes, sharp as ever, studied him carefully as she moved closer, the faintest trace of a smirk curling her lips. "Lena," Soren said flatly, not bothering to hide the wariness in his voice. "What do you want?" She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I'm here to warn you. You don't know what you're walking into. The martial world has been stirring, Soren. And now that you've returned, you've given them reason to come for you." Soren's jaw tightened at her words. The martial world, he thought bitterly. That phrase alone brought back too many memories, memories of battles fought and blood spilled, some of it his own. The last thing he wanted was to be dragged back into the political games of the Iron Wind Order, but here he was. "I've left that world behind," Soren said, his voice steady, though there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. "I'm not going back." Lena's expression softened for a brief moment, but only for an instant. Then she leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. "You don't get to choose that, Soren. Darius Vane isn't the only one you have to worry about." Soren's eyes narrowed. Darius Vane, the name struck like a thunderclap, and though he had expected it, hearing it again still sent a shiver down his spine. He remembered the scar on Darius's jaw, the coldness in his eyes when they had last crossed swords. But Lena's warning hinted at something more, a shadow, a growing threat in the background. "What do you mean?" Soren asked, though he already feared the answer. Lena took a step closer, her gaze never leaving his. "There are others, people you've crossed in the past. Rival factions, those who want your position, your influence, and they won't stop until they've crushed anyone who dares to stand in their way. You thought you could walk away? Soren, the world isn't finished with you yet. It's only just begun." Soren took a long breath, forcing himself to remain calm. The weight of Lena's words pressed on him like a vice. He had hoped, perhaps naively, that he could live quietly as Dr. Soren Vale. But deep down, he knew the past would always follow him. The Iron Wind Order, with its factions, power struggles, and enemies, was never far behind. "And what do you expect me to do about it?" Soren asked, his voice low but filled with frustration. Lena's lips curled into a faint smile, though it was laced with bitterness. "I'm not here to give you solutions, Soren. I'm just here to remind you that no one, can escape their past. Not you. Not me. Not anyone." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with unspoken words. The tension between them crackled in the air as Soren weighed his options. He could try to run again, to hide, but Lena was right. His past wasn't done with him. It was coming for him, and it wouldn't stop until the final pieces of the puzzle were in place. Soren's eyes flicked to Aric, who had been standing in the doorway, listening in silence. He didn't need to say anything for Soren to know that the young man was now more invested in this investigation than ever before. Lena turned to leave, pausing at the door. "One last thing," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "There's a storm coming, Soren. And when it hits, you'll have to choose your side. Whether you like it or not, the martial world is watching, and it won't be long before they make their move." With that, Lena stepped out into the shadows, leaving Soren and Aric in the dim room, the weight of her words sinking in. Aric spoke up after a long pause, his voice filled with uncertainty. "Do you trust her, Soren?" Soren's gaze was distant as he stared into the darkness. "No," he said softly, "but I trust that the storm is real. And I'll need to face it head-on." As the door closed behind Lena, Soren felt the full weight of his past settling back onto his shoulders. The future was murky, but one thing was clear: the martial world was far from over. And Soren Vale was about to be pulled back into it, whether he was ready or not. The mansion felt colder than it had moments before. The soft murmur of Aric's voice and the faint crackle of the hearth in the corner seemed distant, as if muffled by the weight of the silence that had fallen over Soren. After the confrontation with Lena, Soren could feel the weight of her words pressing against him. The storm that she had warned of was no longer just a distant threat, it was something tangible, something he had to face. But as he walked through the dimly lit hallways of the mansion, Soren's mind was far from the danger that loomed ahead. It was on the poison that still coursed through his veins, silent, insidious, and unyielding. Every step he took felt heavier than the last, and the dull throb in his chest, once an occasional inconvenience, now flared painfully. The poison was no longer just an aching reminder of his past, it was a living thing, gnawing at him, pulling him back into the dark place he had fought so hard to leave. Soren paused at the foot of a grand staircase, his hand gripping the railing as the pain hit again. It wasn't just physical. The familiar burn, a searing reminder of the poison's slow march through his body, was joined by the emotional weight of everything he had tried to bury. His breath quickened, but Soren pushed it all down. He would not, could not, show weakness. Not now. Not when the investigation was so close to revealing the truth. He had come this far, and he would not be brought down by something as mundane as poison. He had faced death before. He had killed men and been close to death's embrace more times than he cared to count. But this was different. As the pain began to subside, Soren exhaled slowly, willing his body to settle. He straightened his back, pushed through the lingering weakness, and forced his feet to move. But it was becoming harder. Behind him, Aric had been following quietly, not speaking, as if sensing something was wrong. Soren didn't need to look to know the young man was there, his concerned eyes watching Soren's every move. "Doctor," Aric finally spoke, his voice soft but firm, "are you all right?" Soren didn't turn to face him. He couldn't. He knew the boy could see it in his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped, the way he moved slower than he ever had before. The way the light in his eyes was dimming, just a little. He couldn't afford to show weakness, not to Aric. Not to anyone. "I'm fine," Soren replied with a clipped tone, his voice betraying none of the discomfort he was feeling. He waved his hand dismissively, pretending to brush the question away. "Just a little tired. That's all." But Aric wasn't fooled. The young man stepped closer, his eyes narrowing with concern. "You're not fine, Soren. I can see it. You're hurting." Soren finally turned to face him, forcing a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. He had to push Aric away, had to keep him at arm's length. The boy was too eager, too trusting, and Soren wasn't sure how much longer he could keep up the facade. He couldn't let Aric know the truth. He couldn't allow him to see the toll the poison was taking, the way it was slowly eating away at his life. "It's nothing," Soren said, the words coming out with a touch more venom than he intended. "You've done enough, Aric. You've helped me already." Aric didn't back down. He stepped closer, determination written on his face. You can't keep hiding this, Soren. Whatever's happening to you, I'm not going to just walk away. I'm here to help. Soren's expression darkened, a mix of frustration and something darker flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth to snap at the young man, but something inside him faltered. The pain, the constant gnawing ache in his chest, surged again, stronger this time. He staggered, his vision blurring for a split second as the world tilted around him. Aric caught him before he could fall, his hands steady and strong as they gripped Soren's arm. Soren! Aric's voice was filled with panic now. What's happening to you? Soren bit down a groan, trying to pull himself together. He was no longer the man he had once been. His body had betrayed him, and there was nothing he could do about it. The poison had been a slow death from the beginning, a reminder of his greatest failure. And now, every time he breathed, it felt like it was suffocating him a little more. I'm fine, Soren said again, though it came out weaker this time. He yanked his arm away from Aric's grasp, trying to regain his composure. I told you, I'm fine. But as he stood there, Aric's concerned gaze never left him. The young man's persistence, his loyalty, only made Soren feel more isolated. How could he explain this? How could he tell Aric that the poison would never let him go, that it would eventually destroy everything he had once been? I'll be fine, Soren said again, though even to his own ears, it sounded like a lie. Aric didn't respond immediately, but the silence between them was thick, heavy. Finally, the young man spoke, his voice quieter this time. I don't know how long you can keep going like this. You're pushing yourself too hard. And I can see it's killing you. Soren's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and something more, something he couldn't name. But before he could respond, the pain struck again, this time stronger than before. He gritted his teeth, trying to ignore it, but the tremors in his hands betrayed him. Aric stepped forward again, his voice soft but firm. Soren, let me help you. We can figure this out together. Soren's heart pounded in his chest, but he couldn't bear the thought of letting Aric in any further. He had to protect him, to keep him away from the truth. He couldn't let Aric see him break, not like this. Not over a past he couldn't escape. I don't need help, Soren snapped, his voice cold and hard. I've managed alone for a long time. I can still manage now. But even as the words left his mouth, Soren felt the weight of his own words, empty, hollow. He was lying, to Aric and to himself. Aric didn't speak again, but his eyes held Soren's with an unspoken understanding. He knew Soren was hiding something. The question was, how much longer could Soren keep the truth from him? The dim glow of the lanterns flickered in the corner of the room, casting long, twisted shadows across the cold stone floor of the mansion. Soren sat in silence, his thoughts clouded by the tension of the past few hours. Aric had retired for the night, and Soren, left alone with his reflections, had once again found himself drawn back into a dark memory. His hand rested on the old scroll, the one they had found in Lord Brenner's study. The symbol of the Iron Wind Order seemed to burn into his mind as he stared at it, his fingers tracing its edges, each touch pulling him deeper into the past. The poison within him throbbed, a constant reminder that there was no escaping it, not the physical pain, nor the ghosts it had awakened. As the night deepened, the air grew colder, and a sense of unease crept over him. Soren had learned to trust his instincts over the years, and right now, they were screaming at him that someone, was close. He rose from his seat, moving cautiously toward the large window, his gaze scanning the quiet courtyard below. The moonlight washed over the gardens, casting everything in a silver hue. But there, in the shadows just beyond the reach of the light, Soren saw a figure. A silhouette, standing motionless, watching him from a distance. Soren's breath caught in his chest. His hand instinctively reached for the hilt of the blade he kept at his side, though he knew it wouldn't do much good against the sharpness of the memories that flooded back in that single instant. Darius Vane. The name hung in the air, as oppressive as the silence around him. His mind raced back to the past, to the final battle between him and Darius. It had been a fight like no other, a duel that had shattered their friendship and left a scar on Soren's soul that he would never be able to erase. Darius had always been the one who pushed him to be better, to be more ruthless, more unyielding. They had once fought side by side, their blades as one. But the betrayal, the poisoned blow, it had all ended in that fateful moment. And now, after all these years, there he was, standing in the shadows, watching. Soren's heart pounded in his chest, the old wounds reopening with the sharpness of Darius's ghost. His former ally, his rival, still alive, still watching from afar, and still very much a threat. The figure remained still, almost unnaturally so, as if waiting for something, or perhaps just savoring the moment. Soren's instincts told him that Darius wasn't here for a confrontation, not yet. He was testing the waters, watching Soren closely, studying his every movement. Soren's fingers tightened around the edge of the windowsill. He wanted to move, to face him, but the stillness of the night seemed to hold him in place, a chill settling deep within his bones. This was no longer just a battle of swords, it was a battle of wills, a struggle for control over a past that refused to stay buried. In the distance, the shadowy figure shifted slightly, his face obscured by the hood of his cloak. But Soren knew the silhouette all too well. The broad shoulders, the stance, everything about him screamed Darius Vane. A reminder of betrayal. Soren's gaze hardened. He knew that a confrontation with Darius was inevitable. There was no escaping it now. This was more than a mere warning. The past had come back to haunt him, and with it, the ghosts of the Ironwind Order. The figure turned slowly, as if knowing he had been seen, and began to move away, disappearing into the shadows of the estate. Soren didn't follow. Instead, he stood there, his mind swirling with the weight of what was to come. Aric had no idea what was at stake, but Soren knew better than to pretend this was just another case. The stakes had just gotten much higher. His past had returned. And this time, it wouldn't be so easy to walk away. As the figure melted into the night, Soren couldn't help but feel the familiar surge of anger and regret stir within him. His body tensed, but there was nothing he could do now. He had to play the game, whether he wanted to or not. Darius Vane was back. And the storm that followed him would be one that Soren couldn't escape, no matter how hard he tried. The quiet of the mansion was broken only by the occasional crackle of the hearth. Soren sat alone in a dimly lit study, the scrolls and papers scattered before him. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, still haunted by the ghost of Darius Vane, the symbol of the Ironwind Order, and the constant pull of his past that seemed determined to drag him back into the martial world he had long since abandoned. The wind howled outside, but inside the study, it was warm, a false comfort that did nothing to quell the cold in Soren's heart. His fingers traced over the faded text of the scroll they had found in Lord Brenner's study, the name Thorn lingering in his mind. The investigation had taken a dangerous turn, and Soren knew they couldn't stop now. The pieces were coming together, but the bigger picture was still out of reach. His thoughts were interrupted by a quiet knock on the door. "Enter," Soren said, his voice strained with the weight of his thoughts. Aric stepped into the room, a sheet of parchment in his hand. His face was serious, his eyes wide with determination. "Soren," he said, his voice urgent, "I found something." Soren straightened, his brow furrowing. "What is it?" Aric stepped forward, handing him the parchment. "The name Thorn. I traced it back to Brenner's dealings. He was connected to someone by that name, someone who could have known about the murder. It's the break we've been waiting for." Soren took the parchment, his eyes scanning the carefully written notes. The name Thorn was familiar, too familiar. He had heard the name whispered in the same circles that had once trusted him in the Ironwind Order. But Thorn was a shadow in the records, a name that appeared only in passing, linked to smuggling, secretive alliances, and shadowy dealings. "This doesn't make sense," Soren murmured, his mind racing. "Thorn is a ghost. A shadow, someone who operates from the shadows. He's not someone we can find easily." Aric's eyes lit up with resolve. "But we have to try. This could be our way into understanding who's behind all of this. Lord Brenner's death wasn't just an isolated incident. Thorn could be the key to unraveling the conspiracy. Soren closed his eyes for a moment, weighing his options. He could ignore this lead, pretend it wasn't there, but he knew better than to dismiss something so critical. Ignoring it would only make the danger worse. He had already seen the web of deceit begin to tighten around him. If they didn't act now, they would be caught in the storm. "I don't like this, Aric," Soren said, his voice a mixture of reluctance and resignation. "Thorn is dangerous. Anyone tied to Brenner's death is dangerous. But we have no choice. We need to follow this lead." Aric's eyes were full of resolve. "Then we go together. We find Thorn, and we find the truth." Soren stood up slowly, his body aching with the reminder of the poison that still lurked beneath his skin. His thoughts raced, but he knew what needed to be done. There was no turning back now. Aric was right, they couldn't wait any longer. The danger was already here, and if they didn't take action, they would be swept away by the very storm they were trying to avoid. Soren sighed deeply, his eyes meeting Aric's. "All right. We'll find Thorn." As he turned to gather his things, Aric's voice called out to him. "Soren, do you think it's connected to the Iron Wind Order? All of this?" Soren paused for a moment, his fingers brushing over the hilt of his sword as if seeking comfort. His past had already come back to haunt him. But this was different. It wasn't just about the Iron Wind Order anymore. It was about the dark network that had always existed beneath the surface of the martial world, a web of secrets and lies that stretched far beyond anything Soren had ever imagined. "I don't know yet," Soren replied, his voice distant. "But I have a feeling we're about to find out." The decision was made. Aric and Soren would pursue the lead, no matter how dangerous it might be. They were in too deep to turn back now. As they left the study together, the mansion felt different somehow. The air was thick with the sense of impending danger. Soren couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, one that had been set long before they had even arrived. And yet, there was no choice but to move forward. Aric's excitement was palpable, but Soren's thoughts were consumed with the weight of the choices ahead. He couldn't afford to make a mistake, not now. The shadows were closing in around them, and the only way out was forward. With the name Thorn now etched into their minds, Soren and Aric set off into the unknown. The past had caught up with them, and the truth, buried beneath layers of deception, was waiting to be uncovered.